They never expected their whispers to grow teeth. They thought their lies would dissolve like smoke, floating into the air unnoticed, forgotten after a few conversations. But lies are not harmless. They carry weight, they multiply, and they always seek destruction. What began as quiet slander behind closed doors found wings once repeated enough times. Soon, those whispers transformed into a storm. The people who should have known better, who should have paused and questioned, chose instead to add fuel. And before long, their small deception grew into a battlefield where reputations were weapons and alliances fractured under suspicion. You became the center of chaos you never asked for, a war triggered not by truth, but by their inability to face themselves without dragging you down. The psychology of lies is simple but brutal. People believe what is convenient, not what is real. They choose stories that entertain, not facts that require effort to process. Lies appeal to laziness and curiosity at the same time, which is why they spread so easily. And when your name entered their game, it wasn't about you. It was about the thrill they got from tearing someone down. But here is the paradox. Lies may win the crowd in the beginning, but lies can never sustain control. They collapse under the weight of their own contradictions. And when they do, the same crowd that cheered your downfall will turn on those who lit the fire. Their war becomes their punishment. You don't fight lies by chasing them. That is the trap they want you to fall into. If you spend all your time defending yourself, you end up looking guilty even when you're not. The more you explain, the more they twist. Instead, you hold your ground. You let the war rage around you, knowing that chaos devours the very people who created it. Truth doesn't shout, it waits. The liars always go too far. They exaggerate, they contradict themselves, they invent more until even their allies begin to doubt them. And in that moment, you don't need to fight. You just stand, and their empire of deception crumbles without you raising a hand. There's something terrifying to them about your silence. They wanted you frantic, angry, desperate to prove yourself, but you didn't give them that. You watched as they built castles of sand, knowing the tide would come. That calmness is what rattled them most, because liars rely on reaction to fuel their fire. When you refuse to react, they burn themselves out faster. That is the hidden strategy in letting them talk. Every word they speak tightens their own noose. And when exposure finally arrives, it doesn't just take down their lies, it takes down their dignity. You must also understand the damage lies can cause before they collapse. They can ruin friendships, poison trust, and create enemies you never earned. This is why your resilience matters. People will turn cold, not because you wronged them, but because they wanted to believe the noise. It's easier for them to side with the crowd than stand with you. Don't beg them to return. Their absence shows their loyalty was cheap. The war created by lies doesn't just reveal enemies. It reveals weak allies. And that revelation, as painful as it is, cleanses your circle. What's left after the war ends is truth sharpened and purified. Look at history, look at relationships, look at workplaces. It's always the same. A single lie, repeated enough, becomes a movement. And movements are dangerous, not because they are true, but because people enjoy belonging to them. That's what happened to you. They used your name to build unity, to fuel their own importance. But here's what they forgot. Movements built on lies never age well. They collapse quickly, and the shame of believing them stains everyone involved. When the smoke clears, you remain standing, while they choke on the ashes of their own creation. Their war destroyed more of them than it ever did of you. The irony is that the war made you stronger. Lies forced you to harden, to sharpen your perception, to master patience. They thought they were breaking you. They were training you. Because when you endure the fire of falsehood, you learn to survive without the need for validation. You learn that your identity cannot be handed to you by the crowd. And once you know that, no lie can touch you again. You become untouchable not because lies stop, but because lies no longer define you. That is power they can never reclaim. You need to carry this lesson with you. Lies are not personal. They are projections of weakness. People lie about you to distract from what they cannot face in themselves. That's why you must stop taking it as an attack on your worth. It is an attack on their own emptiness. They throw shadows because they cannot stand the light of someone who doesn't need deception to exist. That's the core of every lie. They are afraid of being exposed, so they try to expose you first. Understanding this frees you. Their war is never about you. It is always about them. When people spread lies, they think they are in control. But what they forget is that control demands consistency, and lies cannot hold it. Truth has patience, lies have panic, and panic always reveals itself in time. That's why you must never lower yourself to their level. Let them wage war with stories. Let them build armies out of gossip. Because when the truth finally marches in, their army scatters, and the silence that follows is louder than any war cry. You win not by striking back, but by outlasting them. Lies were never designed to remain harmless. They are sharpened deliberately, crafted not to inform but to wound. They carry the sting of poison, because once spoken, they don't stay still, they travel. Lies are not just words. They are weapons aimed at the heart of reputation. When someone spreads one about you, their intention is rarely casual. They want the echo, not the sentence. They want others to hear it, repeat it, and eventually believe it. That's why lies are dangerous. They move faster than truth, because truth demands evidence while lies only demand entertainment. They rally the bored, the bitter, the envious. And once the crowd gathers, the damage multiplies far beyond the lips that first released the venom. Psychology explains why lies spread so easily. People love stories that fit their suspicions more than facts that challenge them. A lie confirms what they want to believe. It gives them an excuse to judge without guilt. That's why gossip spreads like fire in dry grass. Everyone passing it along feels validated, and when the lie carries your name, you become their sacrifice. They rally around the falsehood because it unites them. Unity built on a lie is fragile, but for a moment it feels intoxicating to them. They feel powerful mocking you, tearing you down, convincing themselves they've uncovered truth. Yet what they're really doing is sharpening a blade they'll one day cut themselves with. Because lies never stop at one victim. They eventually devour their creators too. You've seen the pattern. One person whispers a twisted version of events, and by the time it travels through 5 mouths, it becomes unrecognizable. But no one checks. No one pauses to ask if it's real. They assume smoke equals fire. And in that assumption, reputations burn. Lies are efficient like that. They save the liar from proof and burden the victim with defense. They make you look guilty before you speak. That's what makes them weapons. They wound without contact. They don't need blood to cripple you. They cut through perception instead. And perception, in the eyes of the crowd, is often more valuable than truth. The scariest part is how crowds are built through lies. People who never had courage alone suddenly find strength together when united by falsehood. They were too weak to confront you individually, but together under the flag of a lie, they feel righteous. They hide behind numbers, pretending their echo makes their accusation true. That's the power of lies as weapons. They turn cowards into warriors, not because they are brave, but because they are armed with the illusion of certainty. Yet deep down, every one of them knows they are playing with shadows. That's why their aggression is so loud. Noise is how they silence their own doubt. You cannot afford to fight every lie. If you swing at every shadow, you'll waste your life. Lies win by pulling you into their arena, where your defense looks like confession. The wiser move is patience. Let them build their story taller, let them sharpen their blades finer, because weapons built of lies are brittle. The moment truth appears, even in the smallest form, their construction shatters. Crowds scatter as quickly as they form, because loyalty built on deceit has no roots. The same people who cheered the lie will abandon it the second they fear being exposed for repeating it. That's the curse of wielding lies. They attract, but they cannot hold. Consider the people who invent lies about you. They aren't just trying to hurt you. They are trying to protect themselves. Lies are mirrors turned outward. They take what they hate about themselves and paste it onto you. That way, the crowd focuses on your supposed flaw instead of their real one. It's projection disguised as truth. And when the crowd believes it, the liar feels safe. For a time. But projection always cracks, because eventually reality demands attention. And when it does, the crowd sees not only their lies but their cowardice. The weapon they built to wound you backfires, cutting their own reputation deeper than yours ever was. You must treat lies as storms. They roar, they flood, they make the world believe everything is ruined. But storms pass, and when they do, what survives proves its strength. Your reputation may be shaken, but truth does not die. Lies, however, always weaken with time. They need constant retelling to survive, and every retelling risks contradiction. That's the fragility of lies as weapons. They appear sharp at first strike, but their edge dulls quickly. And once it dulls, the weapon is useless. All that's left is the shame of the one who swung it. There's power in recognizing this. If you understand that lies are weapons, you stop expecting fairness. You stop expecting people to naturally choose truth. You accept that some will enjoy your pain because it distracts them from their own. This doesn't make you bitter. It makes you dangerous. Because when you know the game, you stop playing as prey. You stop defending every accusation and instead build a silence that outlasts their noise. That silence unnerves them. They wanted your panic, not your patience. They wanted a spectacle, not your composure. And when you deny them that, their weapon loses half its strength. People will always use lies to rally crowds, but crowds are fickle. Today they chant against you. Tomorrow they forget you. The same mouths that cursed you will chase the next story. That's the temporary nature of weapons made of words. They hurt, but they don't last. What lasts is the way you carry yourself in the aftermath. If you crumble, they believe their lie defined you. If you stand taller, they realize their lie built you. And nothing enrages them more than seeing you rise from the fire they set. Because in that rise, you expose the weakness of their weapon. False stories are built for speed. They don't require facts, evidence, or consistency. All they need is an audience willing to be entertained. And people always choose entertainment over effort. That's why lies sprint while truth limps behind. A lie can be told in a single sentence, while truth often needs context, patience, and explanation. They knew this when they started speaking against you. They didn't need proof to stain your name. They only needed volume. And once the crowd heard it, once their curiosity was hooked, the lie moved faster than you could even think of responding. That's the unfairness you must learn to understand. Look at how people react when a rumor enters the room. Eyes light up. Bodies lean closer. Curiosity takes over. No one pauses to ask if it's accurate because accuracy is boring. Accuracy requires work. The false story, though, thrills them. It's like fire. They want to pass it on, feel the heat, watch it spread. The human brain is wired for novelty. Lies are novel, truth is steady. And novelty always grabs attention first. That's why you cannot compete with lies using speed. You compete with lies using endurance. Because while they sprint, they also burn out. And when they collapse, truth is still standing. You need to grasp the psychology of repetition. The more a false story is repeated, the more it feels real to those hearing it. People confuse familiarity with truth. If they've heard it enough times, they stop questioning it. That's how propaganda works, and that's how gossip destroys. It doesn't need to be correct. It only needs to echo. You cannot stop people from echoing. But what you can do is outlast the echo. Over time, contradictions surface, the holes grow wider, and the same crowd that once carried the false story loses interest. The lie dies because repetition loses its power without novelty. False stories also spread because they carry emotional charge. People don't pass on neutral information. They pass on what makes them feel something. Anger, envy, superiority. That's why gossip about you traveled so quickly. It gave them a chance to feel powerful at your expense. They got to play detective, judge, and executioner all at once. The truth, in contrast, rarely excites them. It doesn't give them the same rush. But here is where the shift happens. When the thrill of the lie fades, people crave stability again. That's when truth finally takes its seat. It arrives slower, but it lasts longer. Think of how this plays out in daily life. Someone says you failed, and it spreads in hours. Proof that you succeeded. That takes weeks, months, even years to be acknowledged. Because failure entertains the insecure. Success demands they confront their own lack of effort. That's why false stories get wings while truth is forced to crawl. And yet, the crawl is stronger. Because when truth finally reaches the room, it doesn't excite for a second. It transforms for a lifetime. Lies flash and fade. Truth endures. That's the rhythm you must never forget. You will be tempted to defend yourself at the pace of their slander. That temptation is a trap. The more frantic you look, the more guilty you appear. Let them outrun themselves. Let them exhaust their energy spreading stories about you. While they waste themselves in chatter, you conserve. You move deliberately. You build patiently. Then, when truth finally surfaces, it crushes not just the lie but the credibility of those who carried it. You don't win by sprinting after them. You win by showing up at the finish line untouched, while they stumble in exhaustion. There's irony here. The same speed that makes false stories powerful is what destroys them. Lies spread so quickly they begin to contradict themselves. Too many versions exist, and people start noticing the cracks. Truth doesn't have this problem. It doesn't need variations to survive. It stays consistent. And consistency is what eventually makes people question what they heard before. They may not admit it to you, but they start realizing they were wrong to believe the rush. They feel embarrassed, ashamed, even betrayed by the ones who fed them. That is when the false story loses its grip. Crowds are fickle. Today they chase the false story about you with excitement. Tomorrow they will chase a new one about someone else. That's the other reason you must not panic. Their attention span is shorter than their loyalty. Lies may sting now, but tomorrow they will forget and move on. Truth doesn't move like that. It doesn't need attention to survive. It only needs time. And when time passes, you remain, while the lie is nothing but a faint whisper no one remembers clearly. Patience is not passive, it's strategy. Let the storm blow. You don't need to chase the wind. You must use this knowledge as armor. The speed of false stories is not proof of their strength. It is proof of their weakness. They move quickly because they cannot stand still. If a lie is forced to pause, it collapses. Truth can pause forever and remain intact. That's why you stay grounded when they talk. You remind yourself that their rush is desperation. They fear what will happen if the story slows down. And eventually it always slows down. That's when truth, slow but steady, takes the throne. The cleverest deceivers know they don't have to convince people with evidence. They only have to make them feel like part of a group. Belonging is a drug stronger than reason. When people fear being left out, they will accept almost anything to remain inside the circle. That's why the most effective liars don't argue with logic. They dangle acceptance. They whisper to the lonely, to the insecure, to the ones desperate for validation, and say you're with us now. And once that hook is in, the truth no longer matters. The lie becomes the ticket to belonging, and no one dares rip it up. That's how reputations are destroyed. Not through proof, but through the fear of standing alone against the crowd. You've seen it in schools, offices, even families. One lie about you spreads, and suddenly people who barely know the details start nodding along. They don't nod because they're certain. It's because they don't want to be the one left out. They crave unity, even if it is unity built on falsehood. And in their hunger to belong, they sell out their own integrity. That's the brutal genius of manipulators. They don't just attack you directly. They recruit others by exploiting that deep, primal need for connection. They create a tribe around a lie, and everyone inside feels stronger together. But strength built on a false foundation always collapses. Psychology has a term for this: social proof. People look around to decide what's true, rather than thinking for themselves. If enough people believe the liar, others fall in line, not out of conviction but out of fear. They tell themselves everyone can't be wrong, even though history proves everyone often is. That's why lies spread like wildfires while truth lingers quietly. Liars understand human weakness better than most. They know belonging beats facts. They know people would rather be wrong together than right alone. And so they weaponize this flaw, turning the crowd into their greatest shield. But here is the danger they overlook. Crowds may be easy to gather, but they are impossible to control forever. Loyalty gained through lies is shallow. The same fear that makes people join also makes them abandon when pressure shifts. If the lie cracks, if doubt creeps in, the very people who cheered will flee to save themselves. They never truly believed. They just wanted to belong. And when belonging threatens to cost them their own skin, they vanish. That's why the liar is always fragile, even when surrounded. Their army is made of sand, ready to scatter at the first gust of truth. You must understand the pattern to protect yourself. When you see groups turn cold without explanation, know a lie has been planted. Don't waste your energy chasing every rumor. See it for what it is. People protecting their place in the circle, not rejecting you personally. Their choice reveals more about their weakness than your worth. They traded honesty for comfort, truth for acceptance. That makes them predictable. And when people are predictable, They are powerless against someone who refuses to bend the same way. That's where your strength lies. You don't beg for inclusion. You stand as your own circle. That independence terrifies liars because they cannot weaponize you. Think of the ones who spread the lies in the first place. They knew exactly who to target. They whispered to those craving relevance, the ones too afraid to stand on their own. They dressed the lie as common knowledge, giving it the illusion of community. And once people repeated it, they trapped themselves. Because to admit doubt later would mean admitting they were wrong, admitting they followed blindly. So they doubled down, not out of belief, but out of pride. The most effective liars know this cycle well. They create a system where people defend the lie not because it's true, but because they're ashamed to admit they were manipulated. That shame keeps the machine alive until it breaks. You cannot underestimate how much of society runs on this mechanism. Politics, gossip, entire organizations, they thrive on lies dressed as belonging. Look at how leaders rally followers. Rarely do they use truth. They use slogans, chants, us versus them. They weaponize belonging because it bypasses thought. The same thing happens on a smaller scale in your life. A toxic friend group, a manipulative coworker, a two-faced relative. They don't fight with proof. They fight with inclusion. They make others feel important by tearing you down. And once others taste that sense of belonging, they become soldiers for the lie. Yet over time, belonging without truth hollows people out. They may mock you now, but in the quiet of their own minds, they feel the weight of false loyalty. They wonder why they sold their dignity so cheaply. They realize the group that promised strength is built on emptiness. And when that realization grows too heavy, the group fractures. Lies may hold people for a season, but truth is the only thing that holds them for life. That's when you see them circle back ashamed, sometimes silent, sometimes apologetic. By then, you've already grown beyond needing them. That's the ultimate revenge, thriving without their approval. The lesson is harsh but clear. Most effective liars weaponize people's need to belong, and most people fall for it. But you don't have to. You choose to stand outside the crowd, even when it feels lonely. You choose truth over comfort, even when it costs you. And that choice is why you outlast the circle built on deceit. Their belonging ends the moment the lie collapses. Your strength endures, because it was never borrowed from the crowd. It was built from within. And in the end, that is what separates those who live as puppets from those who become untouchable. A crowd can deny truth for months, even years, but it takes only one spark to set their pretenses on fire. That spark is evidence, not rumor, not suspicion, but undeniable proof. The moment it enters the room, something changes in their eyes. Suddenly, the confidence they had in mocking you begins to wither. They start looking at each other, realizing how many of them played a part, how many chose silence when they should have spoken. That's the terrifying beauty of evidence. It does not accuse politely. It burns. And when it burns, guilt doesn't stay in one corner. It leaps across the room like wildfire, turning their unity into panic. They thought the lie was safe, but a single match has now illuminated every shadow they hid behind. The psychology of this moment is predictable. People can live with lies if the cost of confronting them feels too high. They justify, they deflect, they cling to excuses. But when evidence steps forward, the mind is forced to reconcile. It cannot hide. Evidence creates cognitive dissonance. They believed one story, but the facts scream another. And instead of courage, most of them choose to scatter blame. They whisper excuses like "I didn't know," or "I just followed what everyone else said." Their guilt is collective, but their instinct is individual survival. That's why the fire spreads so fast. Each person is desperate to push the flames away from themselves, even if it means watching someone else burn. You need to see how fragile their alliances really are. They built unity around deception, but unity born of lies is paper thin. The moment evidence appears, the bonds they swore were unbreakable dissolve. Friends turn on each other. Colleagues deny involvement. Family members distance themselves overnight. Evidence is the great divider.